If you're a longtime subscriber to the Social Regressive, you'll know that my favorite LPVO, my favorite AR optic of all time is this one, the Falcon S8i, which tragically isn't being made anymore. But I have taken this out on successful hog hunts, deer hunts. I've used this in close range drills, medium range drills, longer range drills. I have shot targets at 600 yards with this very precisely, and that's with 223. And I've had this on a bolt action rifle, I've had it on 308, I've done all kinds of things with this, and it just continues to stun me. This is something that I feel perfectly happy dragging out into the great outdoors because I know that it's always going to work and it's going to get me more precisely on target than a lot of the other scopes of its type. This is one that's been dropped in mud, it's all scraped up and dinged up, and it doesn't matter, this thing just keeps on ticking. It is not made anymore, unfortunately, and now we have this. Its successor, the S10i. So instead of 1 to 8, we now have 1 to 10. But what about the rest of it? Everything else on this scope is upgraded and the price has been reduced. This scope, when it was available for sale 2 years ago, I think that was the last time it was manufactured, this cost 420 bucks. This is now going to come in at 400 flat. And for that, you get that huge zoom ratio. You get a similar reticle that's going to be set up for close range and for long distance targets as well. You're going to get illumination. And then here is where the deviations begin. First off, this comes out of the box with a throw lever. This is a little, just kind of unobtrusive little aluminum screw in, and you can actually take it out if you want, throw lever, and this makes this run really fast. The zoom ring feels just wonderfully smooth. It almost has this kind of dry feel to it, not like it's running through grease. It feels kind of like it's going through a dry lube, and it is just really sweet, really smooth. And it goes 10x over here, all the way down to that 1x. Some of the other upgrades that we get are locking turrets. So before, this one had exposed turret knobs, and the way that you could prevent things from moving around, like say if it brushed against clothing or in your bag or whatever, is that these were not the easiest to turn. That was its security. You know, they worked, they were precise, you could use them to dial for your shots, or you could use the reticle. Same for this one. But this one actually has a lock now, and it's easier to spin. So you just pull up or pull out on the windage one, and then you can click these around. These clicks feel nice and palpable, and they lock in pretty well with just a tiny little bit of wiggle between each spot. But they click into place. You're not going to get sound, really. It doesn't sound like much, but it feels good, and it snaps into place each time. Not only does it snap neatly, this is one that you can rely on for making precise shots out at difficult distances. This is a scope that I would easily rate in a rifle like this one, this Palmetto State Armory AR-10, previously reviewed. I'll put a link to it up here. But yeah, with this rifle and this scope, I think I would have no trouble getting out to 1,000 yards with this, no joke. And we'll talk about why with the reticle on the inside, but you could dial for this as well. It's gonna hit each of the spots very precisely. In typical Falcon fashion, it tracks very neatly, and it comes back to 0 every single time. Once you found the spot that you want, just push down, it locks into place. And this is actually one of the sweeter locks that I've ever felt. It doesn't like bind up. Some of them, you get them in kind of a medium, kind of a halfway spot, and it just doesn't want to lock back down. This one does it every single time. Doesn't matter where I spin it or how I've done it. I don't have to kind of wiggle it to get it into place and then lock it down. This one just snaps, and that's both on the elevation and on the windage. You actually get just a little bit more sound on the windage, so here, take a listen. The one up top is essentially silent, but you can feel it. One other big upgrade that I really like is something that most people don't think about, and that's the diopter adjustment here at the back. And it's not like it's a different kind, it's still a fast focus eyepiece that you spin, but this one is really difficult to turn, and I love that. Some of them are just too easy, and so it would be easy to lose your perfect diopter setting if it were to brush against your clothes or coming in and out of a bag. You know, it could be something to do with putting on flip caps or whatever. It could mess up your diopter, and this one will not ever be accidentally adjusted, and I just love that. This thing, you really have to crank on it to get it to a new position. Great job, Falcon. I think you guys were listening to some of my comments before and you made that nice and difficult. You guys rock. All right, so let's talk about some of the other upgrades that are more on the inside of this. Now, one thing is the glass in the S8i was really good. You could read mirage, which is a bit atypical for an LPVO. Normally, yeah, you can make long shots with one, but you're not going to be able to see a whole lot of detail. This is sharp, it has no color cast, great contrast, just tons of resolution coming through here, and that's one of the biggest reasons why this was my favorite. This one continues in that tradition. Out at longer distances, you can see mirage, you can see all kinds of little details, you can see color. It's not going to be as much as you're going to get with a 25 power scope. We were actually kind of putting this up against a Leupold Mark V that was a 5-25, and yeah, that one you could see, you know, bullet holes at 550 yards and whatever. And yeah, you can't exactly do that with this one, but for a 10x scope, this actually has much more resolution than you would expect. It doesn't get weird down at 1x. We had one person ask about that, where his got a little fuzzy down at 1x. Nope, stays nice and clear. Up at 10x, same thing. It's just sharp, clear, and bright all the time. The reticle on the inside is still second focal plane, and it's still illuminated, but we're changing things up. The S8i had a kind of a center diamond with a dot illuminated. And if you know anything about the way that the eye works and the way that the brain works, we're drawn to diagonals like that. And we're drawn to color, we're drawn to red, all those things. So you stack all those up and you end up with a scope that really draws the eye and becomes a really great kind of close range hog defense scope. This one does things a little bit differently. Because this has a Christmas tree type reticle that has more data down below, they simplified the center and it's just a red dot. This is going to function just like a red dot scope, like a Bushnell TRS-25 or an aim point or something, and it illuminates daylight bright. When you crank on the illumination knob on the side, you can go from 1 up to, I think the maximum level is 12. And so you can pick what works for your environment. Where you might want to use this is going to be in that defensive scenario. Go ahead and crank that up. If you got hogs that might be at close distance, get this thing down to 1x, put this on that 12, that maximum brightness, and then just get ready to use that like a little laser and take those animals out. As for the rest of the reticle, you are looking at a very competent Christmas tree reticle. In the past, Falcon has always had really good mill type and MOA type reticles that gave you, good stadia up and down. But then if you wanted to hold off for windage or whatever, you either had to dial for your elevation and hold off for windage on the stadia, or somewhere in there. But this one actually has a full Christmas tree that Kedrick and I tested out. And we had 3 shooters. We had me and Kedrick that decided to just run the reticle. And then we had Mitch who decided to dial on here. And in all those cases, it works. You can dial for it, you can use the reticle for it, it doesn't matter. In my opinion, just get used to using this like a DMR scope. It's a killer DMR scope. This is one that you could put on an AR-10 like this one, and an AR-15 over here, and you're going to be able to deal with targets at any variation from 0 out to 600 yards would be a pretty doable shot with this, and you can actually branch this out farther out. I mentioned that you could take this rig as built out to 1,000 yards, and I completely hold by that. This would actually have no trouble with that. You get plenty of drop just in the reticle. You wouldn't even have to touch the turrets, and you can hold off for wind. Now, we did have one issue that I should point out when we were out at the range. The ammunition had a powder that was very sensitive to temperature, and so we had to actually decrease our hold as our shoot went on. It went from 3.4 mils down to actually 3 mils because these things were moving so much faster. But aside from that, everything was good there. But let's get down to some specs and stats on this. First off, like I mentioned, this is going to be $400, 1:10 by 24 millimeter. That's the usual kind of setup, but that massive zoom range is just wicked cool. 42.9 millimeter ocular bell. That's going to be outside dimensions. 30 millimeter tube, and its weight is actually less than 19 ounces. I think that this old one was 19 ounces, the S8i. The S10i, with all of its extra tricks like the locking turrets and all that, actually weighs less. This is 18.5 ounces, and that is not too shabby, especially for a DMR scope that you want to be able to just take as your you know, everyday, everything, whatever happens rifle, drag it out into the wilderness, you want something that's going to weigh, you know, less than 20 ounces, and this definitely fits that bill. 10.8 inches of length overall without the sunshade, which I don't know how many LPVOs you've seen that actually have sunshades. I've seen a couple, but this is one of those rare cases. And because this has a high zoom ratio, if you know you're going to be doing like a lot of prone work and the sun may be just, you know, kind of near your target area, this is actually a pretty good one to throw on. High zoom ratio scopes have a tendency to grab just a little bit of bloom. Now this one actually works really well when it comes to that. It does a good job of preventing a lot of that bloom. The coatings that are on the lenses are just very, very good. Multi-coated lenses, fully multi-coated all the way through. And it does a good job of preventing a lot of those internal reflections. But since when you're zoomed all the way in and the sun is just a little bit off axis that you could get some of that bloom, you can go ahead and throw this on. It's kind of funny, but there you go. This actually does have a sunshade. Some of the other goodies that will come in the box are going to be this front flip cap that works on the scope or the sunshade. You can pop that on there. And then you have the rear one. And these actually fit rather snugly. Some of them have been, you know, on various scopes, they don't fit so well. You're wondering if they're gonna fall off in the field. But yeah, these are really nice. Some of the other goodies that we have in the box include a rag. This is, one of the cool things about this is you don't need special tools to adjust anything here. Like if you want to reset zero, all you need is the rim of a case or a coin. You spin this off, pop it off, drop it back down. It's stupid easy. Once you get your zero, you just set this, lock the turret down so that it clicks into place and isn't going to move anymore. Undo that one screw, pop the cap off, turn it to zero, slap it back down, and you're good to go. Which does actually bring up one thing that I forgot to mention. The turrets do not track up and down as you dial to different places. So if you wanted to use this as a dedicated really long range scope, it's not going to be the best for that because you're not going to be able to see where everything is. It also doesn't have a zero stop. So it's best to keep things within kind of practical distances, like adjustments from 0 to, you know, 10 milliradians or so. You can definitely go beyond that. This actually has 30 milliradians of adjustment up, down, left, and right, which with a 20 MOA mount in here is going to make this just a really long-range capable rifle. Like I said, you could get this to 1,000 yards pretty easily, you know, with the right ammunition, the right configuration. Yeah, and I hold by that. This is something that you could make really long shots with. One thing that I need to point out is that the parallax that's fixed in here doesn't have a parallax adjustment. There are two issues with this. First off, you have two different scopes that you can buy. There is a 25 meter fixed parallax S10i, or there's a 100 meter one. And if you are going to be, if you know you're going to be dealing with things that are very close up, like maybe you want to drop this on a 22 or other rimfire rifle, or if you know that you're going to be just doing defensive use for it, go ahead for that 25 power. At close distance, you're going to notice that there is a bit of a focal difference between you know, what you see with this eye and what you see with this eye. Of course, it's going to be the exact opposite when you get out to longer distance with the 100. This is going to be one that if you're, you know, up on 10x and you're taking long shots, everything's going to look really, really good. So yeah, just kind of pick whichever scenario you think you're most likely to find yourself in. And that does bring up one other thing. Since there is no parallax adjustment and this is a 10 power scope, you're right on the edge of where people like to have parallax adjustment. I didn't personally miss it, but I did notice that when I was shooting at the 500 meter target, that the target wasn't perfectly in focus the same as the reticle. It didn't mess up my shot any. I just had to adjust my eye minute amounts in order to see mirage and other details out at the target, and then kind of roll my focus on my eye just a little bit to be able to see the reticle nice and crisp and clear. And then you can pick how you want to take the shot if you want to have whichever one in focus. But again, it's a very, very minute difference. It's not much at all. And that's one of the things that makes this just wonderfully capable. This is something that I felt comfortable taking shots from that 200 meters out to 500 meters without, you know, to me, I didn't really miss the parallax. It just worked. Now we're getting down to one of the most important elements of a scope like this, and that is its ruggedness. This S8i, one of the reasons why I love it so much and would happily throw it onto any of my rifles is that it has proven itself in dirt, in sand, in snow, in mud. It's gotten rained on, it's been dunked, everything has happened to this scope, and absolutely nothing is wrong with it. It works just like it did straight out of the box, however many years ago that was, like 4 years or so. And that didn't actually have an IP rating, so this wasn't actually tested by one of the the testing bodies. This is not IP anything. It's just they said that, you know, in their literature that this could withstand 3 feet of water for some amount of time. This is an IP67 rated scope, and that is a huge deal. That means that with the IPX sort of standard of 7, that you could take this scope, you could put it under 3 feet of water for a half hour, fish it back out, and it should be just fine. Nothing should have ingressed into the scope. That's a big deal. That means that rain is no issue. If you get into a tornado, it should be just fine. But the 6 part of that, the IP67, means that this can handle all kinds of dust and debris as well. So if you live in a sandy, dirty climate, like say you're in an arid environment like the desert, if you're an Aussie and you're looking for a scope that's going to be able to handle a lot of difficult terrain and just, you know, a lot of that fine dust and crud that you get in certain areas, I mean, heck, this is the Dust Bowl, or at least it was at one point here in Oklahoma. And yeah, this should be able to just shrug it all off. Adding to the scope's whole build, the lenses themselves kind of do the same thing. They're fog-proof, waterproof. You know, the rain should just kind of bead up and fall off them. And in my own testing with this one, that's just kind of how it works. You go out deer hunting on a cold morning, and the fog, you know, maybe it'll flash fog for a second when you breathe on it in the cold, but it just kind of goes away pretty quickly. And that is why the S10i, I think, is going to become my new favorite scope. I know it's difficult to pick one because I have so many, you know, different things for different functions, but when it comes to actual real world, I don't know what's going on. I'm going out to a ranch where there may be multiple animals I can hunt, like coyotes, and you know, it could be deer, it could be whatever. You know, maybe I'm up in a deer stand waiting for a deer, and then a coyote wanders out 1,000 yards away, and we're just about to bust a light anyway, so might as well take the shot. That is what this scope can do. This is going to be able to deal with all kinds of, yeah, just wild critters from any distance that I have to deal with them. Yeah, there'll be certain ones that would be better at a certain shot, like if I'm taking a 600-yard shot on a pig. Would I want, you know, like the Trace Advanced with a Tremor 3? Sure, I'll take that. But this is that I don't know what could possibly happen scope, and this is most likely to get the job done at those various distances. So thanks a bunch for watching, guys. If you want to check one of these out, I don't know if they're available yet. Check out pyramidair.com. They sell a lot of air rifle related things, and they get a lot of European imports like this one. Air rifles are some of the nastiest things that you can put under a scope of any quality because of that big forward momentum that they get, especially springers. It's going to mess with these things a whole lot. This is built to withstand everything from those air rifles up through 338 Lapua Magnum and whatever kind of big stuff you have. Everything inside here should be braced really nicely. I've had these scopes on all kinds of different rigs and not a single issue. I mean, heck, this is an AR-10 and 308. And it's going to have, you know, all the forward momentum as well as the rearward, and no issues. And I don't expect them to ever happen. Thanks a lot for watching, you guys. You'll be seeing this scope, I'm sure, in some future challenges, or you may see it on a hunt, and I'll try to point it out when I use it. Thanks a lot. See you guys later.
Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These 2 videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, the Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the destructive arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.